You know, usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis or just our own health in general, there is this deep-seated expectation of a clean slate.
Oh, absolutely.
Like if you catch a bug, you take the medicine, the bug dies, and you are, back to 100%. Or you go on a week-long juice cleanse, you detox, and you get this mental image of all the bad stuff just sort of washing down the drain.
Right, leaving you completely purified.
Exactly, leaving you purified. It's a very comforting idea. I mean, we really love the idea of the human body as this magical, self-cleaning oven.
Well, it is comforting, and it makes total sense why we want to believe it. We have this psychological need to believe in a reset button.
Yeah.
The idea that no matter what we expose ourselves to on a daily basis, our biology can just, bounce back to factory settings if we just give it a weekend break.
Right. But today, we are taking a deep dive into some recent research that completely shatters that myth.
It really does.
We are looking at a piece called Master Insight, #385 by Fuqi Wu, and this was published on July 29th, 2026. And the premise here, it fundamentally changes how you view your own body, because it turns out that detox you might be celebrating could actually be a sign that permanent damage has already been done.
Yeah, it really is a critical paradigm shift, because relying on this mythical detox capability isn't just like a slightly misguided wellness trend. According to this research, it is a fundamentally flawed way to understand human biology.
Okay, let's unpack this. The central premise that gets laid out right at the start is pretty counterintuitive. It says that just because a toxin disappears from your body or, stops showing up on a routine blood test does not mean you have one. In fact, low toxin levels might actually be the smoking gun that the damage has occurred.
That is the core illusion we have to dismantle right there. To understand why we're getting this whole concept of detoxing so wrong, we have to look really closely at the deceptive nature of chemical reactions inside us.
Okay, how so?
Well, the common belief is very linear, almost mechanical. People think a toxin enters the body, it flows through the bloodstream, the body identifies it as an invader, and then boom, the body flushes it out through sweat or urine.
Right, like dirt on a windshield. You spray the wiper fluid, you wipe it away, and it's gone. You can see clearly again.
Exactly. But biological reality is far more complex and, honestly, a lot less forgiving. When a chemical toxin enters your system, only a tiny fraction might be lucky enough to get flushed out perfectly intact.
Just a fraction.
Just a fraction. The rest of it gets distributed. It might get absorbed by your fat cells and stored there.
Yeah.
It gets sent to the liver to be converted. Or, and this is most significantly, it reacts directly with your tissues.
Like actually binding to them.
Yes, reacting with your cells, your proteins, your cell membranes, or even your DNA.
Wow. Think of it like pouring a bucket of corrosive acid onto a block of solid metal. You pour it on, it fizzes, it smokes, there's a big reaction. Now, if you come back a few hours later and measure the acid itself, the concentration of that acid is going to be way lower.
It might even be completely gone.
Right, completely gone. But you wouldn't throw a party and celebrate that the acid has vanished because you look at the metal and it is completely pitted and corroded. The acid didn't magically disappear. It was consumed by the chemical reaction that damaged the metal.
What's fascinating here is how perfectly that translates to our internal biochemistry.
Yeah.
A drop in a specific toxin's concentration in your bloodstream is often not a victory at all. It is merely the receipt of a chemical reaction.
The receipt. I like that.
Yeah, the toxin was consumed, sure, but your cellular health was the currency used to pay for that transaction. The toxin bound to your cells or altered your proteins, and in doing so, it changed its own chemical structure.
So when you take a blood test later, it no longer registers as that original toxin.
Exactly.
We tend to think a low toxin level means our body successfully fought off the invader. But what we are actually looking at is a situation where the invader successfully detonated. Which brings up something I really want to push back on for a second. Let's say the toxin detonates. It gets consumed in that chemical reaction, and now it is technically gone. Why doesn't the body just heal?
Ah, right.
I mean, we get cuts and scrapes all the time and they heal. What exactly is this invisible microscopic wreckage happening to the metal of our bodies?
That is the exact logical leap most people make.
Oh.
If a cut heals, why doesn't a chemically damaged cell just heal?
Yeah.
But we have to look at the actual mechanics of the damage. These chemical reactions aren't just leaving a little dent that can be popped back out. Let's look at proteins, for example.
Okay.
Your body basically runs on proteins, and they are folded into very specific, intricate shapes to do their jobs. They're like specific keys for specific biological locks.
Okay, so the shape is everything.
Right. Shape dictates function. When a highly reactive toxin bumps into one of those proteins, it can permanently alter its structure. It bends the key out of shape.
Oh.
Yeah, the protein is still there, floating around, but the key no longer fits the lock. The cellular function doesn't just slow down, it chemically jams.
So it's not a wound that needs to scab over, it's a broken piece of machinery that's still inside the engine.
Precisely. And it goes further than just proteins. Toxins also attack cell membranes, which are primarily made of lipids, or fats.
Okay.
When reactive chemicals hit those membranes, they compromise the integrity of the cell wall. Imagine the walls of a fortress suddenly becoming porous.
That sounds bad.
It is. Nutrients leak out, and more toxins leak in. This triggers a massive immune response, which leads to chronic systemic inflammation. And if this happens in your blood vessels, it damages the vascular lining itself.
Man. But the most sobering example of this lasting damage from the text is how it relates to carcinogens. Because a carcinogen can enter your body, interact with a cell, and physically damage the DNA inside that cell. And then that original carcinogen can completely vanish. It is chemically gone.
Yes. By the time someone actually develops cancer, the original substance that triggered the genetic mutation might be long gone from their system. You couldn't find it on a toxicology screen if you tried.
Because it already did its job.
Exactly. That damaged cell doesn't need the toxin anymore. The DNA error has been written into the code. When that cell divides, it replicates the error. The abnormalities just pile up generation after generation, and it eventually develops into a tumor.
It's basically an arsonist effect. A toxin mutating your DNA is like an arsonist who breaks into a building, sparks a fire, and then sprints away into the night.
That's a great way to look at it.
Right. The arsonist is... Wait, hold on. Let me jump in here because I know what you listening are probably thinking. We literally have internal firefighters. I have liver, I have kidneys. We evolved these organs over millions of years for a reason, right? Aren't they designed exactly to be these heavy-duty filtration systems?
Well, it is a really common defense mechanism to lean on that idea. But we deeply misunderstand what our organs are fundamentally designed to do.
How so?
They exist primarily to maintain baseline life functions. Your heart pumps blood to deliver oxygen. Your lungs exchange gases so your tissues don't suffocate. Your kidneys regulate water, balance salt, and excrete some water-soluble waste products.
And the liver, that's always billed as like the ultimate detox organ.
The liver is an incredible chemical factory, no doubt. It
Right.
processes nutrients, and yes, it attempts to metabolize foreign chemicals, but attempts is the operative word here. These organs are crucial for keeping you breathing and walking today, but they are absolutely not infinite magical filters that can neutralize anything modern life throws at them.
So they have maximum capacities. It's like expecting your home's standard HVAC filter to protect you from a chemical spill down the street. It's just fundamentally the wrong tool for the job.
Exactly. And we also have to look at how the liver actually processes things. It is not a simple incinerator. When your liver encounters a fat-soluble toxin, which, by the way, a lot of modern chemicals are, it can't just send it to the kidneys to be excreted.
Because kidneys only deal with water.
Right, kidneys deal with water.
Okay.
So the liver has to alter the chemical structure of that toxin to make it water-soluble. It uses enzymes to attach different molecules to it.
Okay, so it changes the shape of the toxin so it can be flushed out. That sounds like a good thing.
It is, until it isn't. Here is the catch. During that chemical conversion, there is often a middle step. The liver creates what we call an intermediate compound.
Okay.
And sometimes, depending on the chemical, that intermediate version is actually highly unstable and far more reactive than the original toxin ever was.
Wait, the liver makes it worse? I thought the whole point of metabolism was to break things down into harmless waste. How does trying to flush it out make it more dangerous?
Because to make it water-soluble, the liver sometimes has to strip away electrons or add highly reactive oxygen molecules. For a brief window, that chemical becomes a free radical, seeking to bind with anything nearby to stabilize itself.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, if it escapes the liver before the final stage of conversion, it wreaks havoc. So sometimes our own filtration system accidentally weaponizes the toxin further while trying to get rid of it.
That is just wild to me. So relying on the body to just detox it later isn't just a flawed lifestyle, it's actively ignoring how our biology operates. Which brings up a really crucial point. If our built-in filtration system is this easily overwhelmed and sometimes even makes the problem worse, how are we supposed to survive just going about our normal day with all these daily exposures?
Well, the harsh reality is we enter a state of continuous biological onslaught. Modern life is relentless. We aren't just getting exposed to a single toxin once in a blue moon, dealing with it and recovering. We are living in a continuous cycle of exposure.
Just think about a normal day for a second. You wake up, you are breathing the exact same recycled indoor air all night. You sit in enclosed, unventilated rooms at work. There are cooking fumes in the kitchen. You sit in car exhaust during your commute.
Don't forget the chemical off-gassing from cleaning products.
Right. Synthetic carpets, new furniture. You spend a massive chunk of your life in environments without any true fresh air purification. It is just a 24/7 drip feed.
And this introduces one of the most vital concepts from the research: total accumulated toxic harm. Because of this daily drip feed, we are trapped in a vicious biological cycle.
Break that cycle down for us.
The sequence is rigid. A toxin enters the body. It reacts with your tissues, misfolding a protein or damaging a membrane. The toxin's concentration drops because it was consumed in that reaction. And then, before your body can even begin to deploy repair enzymes to fix that microdamage.
Let me guess, a new toxin enters.
Exactly. A new toxin immediately enters with your very next breath.
The arsonist sets the fire, and before you can even patch the drywall, another arsonist is breaking through the window.
Yes. The repair mechanisms are constantly outpaced by the rate of new damage.
So what does this all mean for how we track our health? It means we have to completely change our metrics. Getting a blood test today that says you have normal liver function or low levels of a specific heavy metal does not magically erase decades of continuous microscopic structural damage.
It doesn't.
You cannot just take a snapshot of today. You have to account for the lifetime total of toxic reactions, the total accumulated harm.
That is the crux of it. If you sustain a microscopic bit of damage every single day, you might not collapse on a Tuesday. The body is resilient, but roll that forward 10, 20, 30 years. The cumulative result of a million tiny, unrepaired cellular fires is a fundamentally weakened biological structure. The scaffolding of your health is slowly eroding.
But if we are taking on this accumulated harm every single day, right now, as we speak, why do we feel totally fine? I mean, you listening probably feel relatively okay right now. If this chemical war is happening inside our cells constantly, shouldn't we be in constant pain?
That is the illusion of youth, and it can be incredibly deceptive. When you're young, your body has an exceptionally high cellular turnover and a massive repair capacity.
So it's fixing things fast enough.
Sort of. It can temporarily compensate for this constant stream of damage. If a few cells die, it rapidly makes more. If an organ's function drops slightly, the rest of the system simply works harder to pick up the slack.
So we aren't unharmed. We are just blissfully unaware because our body is quietly working massive amounts of overtime to hide the damage from us.
Right. It's heavily subsidizing your health.
It's like maxing out your credit cards but feeling rich because you're easily making the minimum payments every month. You aren't actually wealthy. You're just delaying the inevitable financial collapse. And that brings us to the tipping point that the research focuses on: the toxin accumulation saturation point.
Yes. This is a critical threshold. It's not a specific number on a medical chart, and it's not tied to a specific birthday either. It is the exact individual tipping point where the speed of the daily cellular destruction finally outpaces your body's dwindling ability to repair itself.
Your biological credit line snaps.
Exactly. The minimum payments are suddenly too high.
This raises an important question. What does crossing that saturation point actually look like in our day-to-day lives?
It looks like the cascade of failures we traditionally associate with aging. It looks like midlife chronic fatigue that no amount of sleep or caffeine can fix. Yeah, it is waking up from a solid 8 hours in bed feeling completely unrefreshed because your body spent the entire night fighting systemic inflammation instead of actually resting. It's a sudden, steep physical decline. It is developing adult-onset allergies in your 40s because your immune system is entirely overwhelmed.
I know so many people who hit their 40s and suddenly can't eat dairy or become allergic to pollen out of nowhere.
Exactly. That's the saturation point. It's also your memory slowing down, your reaction times dropping. It's the sudden onset of abnormal blood sugar or high blood pressure as your vascular system stiffens up. And ultimately, it is the uncontrollable cell mutation we discussed earlier, leading to severe chronic diseases.
And here is where this deep dive offers a massive reframing of how we view our lives.
Yeah.
Society looks at that list of fatigue, the blood pressure, the joint pain, the memory issues, and we just shrug and say, well, you're just getting older. We write it off as the inevitable passage of time.
We do, yeah.
But the science shows that age is strictly just the measurement of time passing. The actual physical decay, the breaking down of your body, is not time itself. It is the result of years of accumulated, unmitigated toxic damage, finally causing your biological system to overload and fail.
It's a vital distinction.
Ugh.
Midlife fatigue isn't just being old. It is your body sending a clear, unavoidable signal that it is fundamentally overloaded. The damage has saturated the system, the repair mechanisms have basically raised the white flag.
So if we can't unring the bell of cellular damage once it happens, and if every day of exposure is pushing us closer to the saturation point, how do we actually protect ourselves? I mean, if the liver can't magically detox the damage away, what is the actual solution here?
We have to completely redefine what anti-aging actually means. The research provides a very stark conclusion on this. True anti-aging, the kind that leads to a long, healthy life and incredibly slow biological decay, isn't about reversing time. It isn't about finding a magical supplement, a specific superfood, or a new laser treatment that makes a worn-out body young again. The absolute first, non-negotiable rule of anti-aging is this: stop the poisoning.
Stop the poisoning. It sounds almost too simple, but it requires a total shift in focus. You can't wait for the toxin to enter your bloodstream and then cross your fingers and hope your liver enzymes handle it correctly without creating a dangerous intermediate compound. You have to stop the chemical from entering the system at the door.
Exactly.
Which explains why there is such a heavy focus on our environment in this research, and specifically the air we breathe.
The urgency of air quality simply cannot be overstated when we talk about accumulated harm. Think about the basic hierarchy of human survival. You can skip meals for days without permanent damage. You can even go a short while without water. But breathing is a mandatory 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week requirement.
You take roughly 20,000 breaths a day.
Yes, you never stop. Therefore, environmental toxins in the air aren't something you encounter occasionally. They are a constant physical input into your biology.
Which gives you, the listener, a really actionable perspective shift. The wellness industry spends billions of dollars trying to get you obsessed with what you eat, what specific vitamins you swallow, or exactly what your weekly gym routine looks like. And sure, nutrition and exercise absolutely matter for building resilience, but if you want to truly delay that biological saturation point, you must relentlessly scrutinize your invisible inputs.
You really have to.
You have to ask yourself the hard questions. What exactly am I breathing while I sleep for 8 hours every single night? What invisible chemical off-gassing am I inhaling while I sit in traffic on my commute? What is the actual ventilation situation in the office where I spend a third of my life? Because if you are constantly sitting in a stream of invisible airborne pollutants, no amount of organic broccoli or morning yoga is going to save your cell membranes from the arsonist.
That is the ultimate takeaway from this research. You have to seize control of your environmental inputs. Because once the chemical crosses the barrier into your body, binds to a protein, and reacts with your tissue, the biological cost is already paid. The receipt is printed. You cannot unburn the building.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to bring it back to that clean slate we talked about at the very beginning, that comforting illusion of the weekend detox or the routine blood test that gives you a gold star and tells you everything is fine. The biological reality is that your body is a historian. It keeps a permanent physical record of every single chemical it interacts with, etched right into your cells and your DNA.
A permanent record.
And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you go about the rest of your day. If our bodies are keeping a permanent, hidden tally of every invisible toxin we interact with, how does that change the way you view the safety of the comfortable, enclosed rooms where you spend 90% of your life? When you go home tonight, close the windows and shut the door to your bedroom. Are you truly resting? Or is that unpurified, enclosed environment silently, breath by breath, pushing you closer to your saturation point? It's something you really need to look at with fresh eyes. Keep questioning your environment, keep demanding better inputs, and don't rely on a magic reset button that doesn't exist. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.